Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to virtually see you, or actually to have you virtually see me and no one else, it appears. Anyway, this is our September meeting, and I want to give you just a little bit of background before we dive into our agenda. First of all, our Transit Committee subcommittee met on August 24th, and they started working toward recommended investment levels for each of the transit sub-elements. And they're keeping their eye as they do that on the adopted goals from our CAC's guiding principles. As far as I know, the next meeting of the transit subcommittee has not yet been scheduled, but will be coming up. Next, just speaking on behalf of Carolyn and Mary and myself, I wanted to take an opportunity to just tell everyone on the committee how much I appreciate, how much we appreciate all of you and your now 2+ years of dedication and commitment to the Citizen Advisory Committee. Recognize that we're all volunteers here, and our concern about our region is what led us to accept this challenging role that we've taken on. We should recognize that that role may occasionally come with criticism from the outside, including issues regarding makeup of the committee and even attendance. Ultimately, though, the RTA board has appointed each one of us, and it has regularly expressed its appreciation and support for the work that we're doing. Continue to work at the board's pleasure to develop a great plan and ensure that all areas of our region have meaningful input before we finalize it and before we recommend it to them for approval. So once again, just thanks so much for all that you're doing. It really matters. And as always, feel free to reach out to any of the three of us with any concerns or suggestions that you have. Okay, let's get into our agenda. You know that today we get the opportunity to hear the other more or less half of the projects that we started last time, so we can get an introduction to those before we start organizing those projects. First item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from August 10th. And just one change I've been made aware of, Roger Craycraft was actually at the meeting, but the minutes show him as absent. We will make that correction. Yes.
This is John Bernal.
Hi,
I just want to note that I had some technical difficulties and came in through the citizens entry, so I'm not noted, but I did attend.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Any other corrections or issues with the minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, John Holden.
John, go ahead.
I suggest we go ahead and approve the minutes as corrected.
Second by Harlan.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, unmute yourself and say aye.
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 Aye. Chris Schmaltz.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Any opposed? Very good. Changes, we will consider the minutes approved and move into the next item on our agenda. Did I hear someone ask for recognition? No, okay. As you all recall, at our last meeting, we had the chance to go through 40 of the projects that have been suggested so far. And today's meeting is primarily to go to continue that and get through the others. Hockey has sent us some advanced information about those projects. And I'm going to turn the floor over now to Pocky, Rick, and Paul to continue on this introductory phase of the project descriptions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as Chair McGovern mentioned, this is as a recap. And for those of you who were not here last month, this will be a high-level overview of each of the projects to provide information and clarification. Please keep in mind that the projects are submitted and are to be considered as regional priorities. We received a total of 80 projects and we reviewed 40 last month. So we will try to get through the remaining 40 projects today. We encourage your input and have staff available to answer any questions as we go through each project. We will answer detailed questions about technical information and assessment as we get further into the refinement stage. The projects in today's presentation are grouped by road classification and/or implementation sequence. All of you should have received a link to the slide presentation and a spreadsheet of the CAC goals in your packet. I do want you to know that we rearranged just a few of the slides so that we will use the ID numbers on the slide to reference when we have that order. For example, the first slide is going to begin with project ID number 441 today, Toro Road, a principal arterial, just so you have that ready. For consistency, I will be providing a general overview of each of the submitted projects, general information. Rick Ellis, our Transportation Services Director, will go over the scope, and Paul Casertano, our Transportation Planning Director, is going to go over the performance measures for each project. So with that, let's dive into the project. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is not on your list, but we moved this project to be first because it's a principal arterial that we did not catch last time. So Sahuarita Road, from the vicinity of South Country Club Road to Sonoita Highway. This aligns with most of the CAC goals, and it has some performance measures that will be looked at. Rick?
Good morning, everybody. So in jumping in with this portion of Sahuarita Road, while most of the capacity needs are met and provide fairly adequate general all-purpose east-west maneuvering and mobility across this area, during the monsoon season, as well as seasonal rainstorms, there are several drainage crossings that become impassable, resulting in closures that may range from several hours up to a few days. So the intent of this project is to address that, upgrade those crossings and put new ones in where needed, and essentially create an all-weather access facility.
All right. As a reminder to the CAC, as we look at performance measures that are attributed to the project area, what we're essentially looking at is existing condition performance where we have data. So we try to find best available data and apply it to the network. And we can then say for the network area of the project that's being examined, these are the existing condition performance data to be considered, and that may need further investigation. So for pavement, we look at International Roughness Index, which is a measure of the roughness of the ride along the pavement. Doesn't necessarily get to all of the underlying conditions that might be evident in the pavement, but it gives a good sense of what the general pavement condition is. Bridges come from the National Bridge Inventory. For safety, we're looking at level of safety service, which essentially reflects how a roadway segment or intersection is performing in regard to its expected crash frequency for that type of facility. As we look at system performance, we're looking at congestion at intersections, which comes from an intersection model for signalized intersections, and then other segment congestion information that comes out of the regional travel demand model, for both existing conditions as well as forecast no build 2045 conditions. Sidewalk presence is pretty evident. It is taken from ADA sidewalk study information, best available, most recent data we have there. Environmental impact essentially gets to how extensive the intersect of the project is with environmentally sensitive areas. So we have a high, moderate, and low ranking there. For freight reliability, we're looking at the amount of time that should be budgeted for a truck delivery to be on time for 95% of the time, accounting for traffic accidents, construction, special events, and other non-recurring traffic disruptions. So that's essentially what we're looking at across the performance spectrum. It gives you an idea of where there may be areas that need a little bit more attention. In the case of Sahuarita Road, we do see some emerging concerns related to pavement, intersection safety, and roadway safety. There are sidewalk presence issues out there that need further investigation, and we are having a high intersect with environmentally sensitive areas, and that's why that shows up poor. Just wanted to make sure to give that oversight or overview for the CAC for reminder, and for those who were unable to attend the August meeting.
Thank you, Paul. The next project is the one that appears, the first one on the link that you received. This is the Twin Peaks Road Rattlesnake Pass expansion. This is a major collector project from the Saguaro Bloom subdivision to Twin Peaks Road. This aligns with most of the CAC goals and has all but one performance measure available.
The intent of this project is to essentially improve capacity, improve the safety, the overall operations and functionality for that area, and then provide key connectivity with the new development named Saguaro Bloom that's been going in, and then connect it back to the Twin Peaks area where all those areas and roadways have been built out. So it provides a necessary connection in there, as well as addressing the capacity needs for the area.
When we look at performance measures, we see some existing condition safety issues that are in need of attention, certainly. And then as we look beyond that, we see that environmental impact intersect is a high priority there, and sidewalk presence appears to be fairly low.
Okay, the next project is Twin Peaks Road. This is another major collector from Saguaro Highlands Drive to Silverbell Road. This one is about half a mile long, and it meets half of the CAC goals, or is aligned with half of the CAC goals, and it has about 3 performance measures that will need to be looked at.
In the prepackaged documents or pre-meeting documents that were mailed to you, there was a 2-page assessment that had been assembled evaluating and providing some insight onto the projects and some feedback items for consideration and questions that were that arose during a preliminary review performed by PAG staff. This was one of those projects that had overlap, and as we called it out in the assessment, there were essentially 2 projects representing the same area and serving the same part of the roadway system up there. So this is the smaller of the 2, but the overall functionality aspect of it is very similar to what I just reported on, with the main intent being to improve capacity, improve the overall accessibility and operations of the facility, add all the necessary multimodal and fully functional aspects of it as well. So there's just 2 of them reflecting the difference between the different project limits. One's a little bit more extensive. The previous one connecting to the western end of the development with the existing intersections. This one just a little bit smaller.
As we look at existing condition performance data, we do see gaps there. So there's no existing bridge in the National Bridge Inventory. That's why we see an NA there. Intersection safety does not show up on the data that's used uniformly. And there's not a signalized intersection, and that's why we don't see congested intersections. But we do see poor rating for segment roadway safety, and that's certainly something that will need a little bit more attention. And again, sidewalk presence appears to be low, and environmental impact appears to have quite an intersect there with environmentally sensitive areas.
The next project is Lambert Lane, major collector project from Shannon Road, Naranja Drive. This project is about almost 1.5 miles long. It is aligned with most of the CAC goals and has one performance measure that is not applicable at the moment.
So as described, this project is a 4-lane roadway, so it provides all the necessary capacity, operational, drainage, and fully functional improvements and benefits that would come along with that. And it's basically a continuation from the roadway improvements along Lambert Lane that have been working from the east to the west. So this is the final segment. It will connect in at Shannon Road and essentially then provide the full benefit of that type of roadway section throughout the entire length of this roadway area.
Again, we see some existing condition safety issues that are in need of attention, both at the intersection level and the segment level. So both of those pieces of the roadway are not really performing as well as perhaps they should and are in need of additional attention. We do see low sidewalk presence and a high intersect with environmentally sensitive areas.
Moore Road is the major collector from La Cholla Boulevard to La Cañada Drive. It's approximately a 1.25 miles long, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals, and has about 4 performance measures that need to be addressed.
Pocky, did we skip over Shannon Road? Was it the one previous slide?
Oh, I
Never mind.
apologize.
I'll hit Moore
yeah.
first. Want to make sure I get it. I'll address Moore
Throw
first
it.
and following. Do you want to jump in and do Shannon, or do you want me to jump in and do Moore?
Let's do it in the correct order. I apologize, everyone. So next is Shannon Road, major collector from Lambert Lane to Tangerine Road. It's approximately 2 miles, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and has about 3 performance measures that are not applicable.
So the purpose of this project now is to provide an additional connection from Lambert to Tangerine, help and serve the area as it grows and develops, plus provide an additional connection between Lambert Lane and Tangerine, in addition to the La Cholla and La Cañada corridors. The northern portion of the roadway actually is going to be on brand new alignment, so that's included in the overall assessment and the overall cost as well.
The existing condition performance does show some roadway segment safety issues that are in need of attention. And while congestion may not be the issue here, certainly it's something to take a close look at. We do see a poor sidewalk presence of existing condition and a high intersect with environmentally sensitive areas here.
Okay, now we go to Moore Road, again, major collector from La Cholla Boulevard to La Cañada Drive. It's about a 1.25 miles long, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals, and has about 4 performance measures that are not applicable at the moment.
With this project, you're going to see several others that follow kind of a theme here, in which there's a recommendation then, and the proposed project is to construct a 3-lane roadway. So essentially what that is 1 lane in each direction, and then a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. And the benefit of that is it improves the overall safety, the operations, by allowing the turning vehicles to get out of the throughway and avoid any long backups, cut arounds, bypasses, and unsafe activities like that that you often see on a 2-lane roadway without adequate turning facilities. Similar to what you'll see on many other projects, and in keeping with the common theme, there'll be the addition of drainage aspects and improving all that, as well as providing all the necessary fully functional elements that come along for bike and pedestrian use as well.
When we look at existing condition performance, we see some poor pavement quality here. That's something that's probably needs a little bit more investigation. So again, we're just looking at roughness of the ride. There could be more substantial issues with the substructure. that the agency that maintains that facility would need to investigate a little bit more. But the available data shows us that we should look a little further into that. We also see some safety performance that is in need of attention for the segment and a low sidewalk presence of the existing conditions.
This is Arlen. I have a question.
Sure.
So it would help me if, and you sometimes mention it, but what the existing condition of this is. If this is, it says to construct a 3-lane roadway, but if it's currently a 2-lane roadway or a dirt road or whatever it is, I know in one case you said that there was area of, I think, Shannon, that had to have some new construction, completely new construction, but just what the existing situation is.
You got it. Will
Thank you.
do.
So just a reminder that all of the performance data that I'm reporting on, absent the congestion future roadway, is from current existing condition data. So
Right.
Rick is describing is what is proposed for the facility, whereas most of what I'm describing is what's out there today in terms of pavement, safety, congestion, environmental impact, sidewalk presence, and the
Yeah.
like.
Thank you.
Camino de Oeste, this is a major collector from Calle Turin to Valencia Road. About 1.5 miles in length, aligns with about half of the CAC goals, and Paul will go over all of the performance measures on that.
So the key part of this project, in respect for Arlen's request, I'll try to do these as much as I can and as familiar as I am with them. So this particular roadway has had some improvements out there. They've been more spot and functional, dealing with certain issues or certain specific scope items. But the majority of the roadway out there is, I believe, 3-lane through this section. But as a number of roadway and existing streets on the southwest side, they have a lot of drainage issues. This one is susceptible to the black wash area coming through there and overtopping the roadway on a regular, frequent basis out there. So the intent of this project, while it is a 3-lane section, while it does have some pedestrian facilities, the intent is to upgrade it to a full 4-lane facility, create all-weather drainage crossings, and then add all the other functional aspects as well for both bikes, peds, and transit as needed. So this will also then accommodate any future development growth that's planned for the area as the tribal areas continue to expand.
Our existing conditions does show some poor sidewalk presence currently. So while there are facilities there, there's additional attention needed for the sidewalk presence. When we look at safety, we're looking at the northern intersection here that's underperforming a bit. That's the Valencia intersection with Camino de Oeste, where the safety performance is a little bit in need of some attention. And in relation to its similar types of intersections, is performing a little bit lower than some of those other intersections.
Colossal Cave Road, this is segment 1. This is a major collector, and it's one of 2 segments. This one is from I-10 to Marianne Cleveland Way. This is about a 1.25 mile long length project. It aligns with most of the CAC goals, and looks like 4 of the performance measures are in good shape.
This project, the existing setting and conditions out there are a combination of 2 lanes to the south, and then a 3-lane set of improvements along with pedestrian improvements that were provided out there through the Vale community, and then where it ties into Marianne Cleveland Way. So essentially you have a 3-lane and then a couple of turning facilities out there. However, those were more operational, short-term in nature. This project proposes to provide an upgrade to a 4-lane, full capacity section with all those amenities, all the necessary function additions, as well as try to address the 2 railroad crossings, either one or both if possible, that are out there that often impact the overall operations of the facility as well.
As Pocky mentioned, there are some good performing existing condition performance measures here, but we are seeing some deterioration on the pavement side. Safety of both the intersection and the roadway appears to need a little bit of attention here. And we see sidewalk presence in the poor category as well.
This is Arlen. I just have a comment on this one, or part of it anyway. I know it goes through kind of a historic area where the power lines have been to some extent undergrounded, and you've got some historic buildings next to it. And I don't know if that, I'm just mentioning that. It isn't mentioned in here at all.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Bernal. I have a question for Rick.
Go ahead, John.
Rick, your notes say consider including the segment within all jurisdictional boundaries from your review. I assume those would be Pima County and the city of Tucson, or are there other jurisdictions you're thinking about?
Nope, that's it. The two areas and the gap in there is reflective of that gap in between that's in the city jurisdiction. So the project limits would need to be coordinated between those two jurisdictions. But it's those are the only two.
Yeah, I noticed that you mentioned all jurisdictional boundaries in your notes. Can we just specify which jurisdictions those are as we go forward?
Oh, you mean for all projects? Or where that comes up?
Rather than just leaving it as all jurisdictions, it'd be interesting to know who we're dealing with.
Oh, okay. Sure thing.
Thanks.
This is Dale Calvert. I got a question on this too. You mentioned construct one or two bridges over the railroad. Is that a design issue of the fact that the way you design the bridge, because the railroad, there's two sets of railroad tracks that are not immediately adjacent to each other? Is it to facilitate that separation, or is there some consideration of consolidating the railroad tracks?
So the one or two was reflective of the complications that are out there. So essentially you are correct. We have two independent alignments out there with the Union Pacific that are separated by several hundred feet. As Arlen mentioned previously, we do have historic and culturally significant facilities out there that adds to the complication. So that's gonna take a lot to evaluate what can be achieved, what impacts are gonna come with that, the trade-offs of performance on that. It'd probably be stepping out of the boundaries of the RTA to start getting into major track realignment. And through previous efforts out there, I don't believe UP has initiated or had any desire to consolidate their alignments on that and bring those two together at any point in time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The next one is segment 2 of the Colossal Cave Road. And another major collector, it's from Marianne Cleveland Way to Camino Loma Alta. This one's about 1.5 miles, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals, and has three poor and 3 good performance measures.
So this project could be thought of as kind of an extension or a continuation of the previous one, which is why it's kind of segment 2 of 2. So this continues the widening, the improvements, the capacity needs, and all the necessary fully functional elements to continue northeast all the way up to Camino Loma Alta to address the numerous traffic issues out there, the congestion activities that occur and that are prevalent, and help provide that necessary relief.
We do see in the existing condition performance data need to take a closer look at the pavement issues out there. But I want to bring your attention also to the future roadway congestion is popping up on our modeling efforts and showing some poor performance that's probably indicative of the projected growth in that area and the facility itself. So something to be considered in scoping and evaluating the project.
Thank you, Paul. And I did say 3 good. It was 4 good performance measures, 3 poor. So just to clarify.
Just to clarify on that, Marianne Cleveland Way and that traffic, the issue of extending Marianne Cleveland Way to Houghton, I noticed in the comment about the idea that should be maybe consolidated, off a big project to consolidate, but I assume because the city of Tucson hasn't responded, that's not listed at this time, but it probably ought to be considered down the road.
That was the idea and thinking. When we get to that one, yep, I'll expand on that one a little bit.
Okay.
This is Joanne, and I have a question.
Go ahead, Joanne.
I heard several times on different projects that we talk about environmentally sensitive areas. I apologize for not being available the last several months. What does that mean? Environmentally sensitive areas?
Sure. So when we look at that, what we're looking at is the projects intersect with environmentally sensitive designated areas. So let me pull up my notes here to give you a little better sense of what that means. So let's see. So we're looking at priority riparian areas and priority biological reserve categories as adopted in the environmental element of the Pima County Comprehensive Plan largely. So we look at best available data for what types of areas have environmental designations, and then we can overlay the project to see if there's a high correlation or a high intersect of the project in those areas. And that's essentially what we're sharing with environmental impact. How much does the project intersect with designated environmentally sensitive areas? It's not something that's insurmountable for projects. It's just something that needs to be considered as the project moves forward and gets scoped in more detail.
Sorry, everybody, I'm a little behind.
No, you're fine.
Okay, welcome back, Joanne.
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Maxwell. I got a question on this one.
Go, Ted.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this one was submitted by Pima County and it's the first one that we've seen where you've got a future roadway that congestion's worse than the current roadway. Was there any consideration to adding lanes as part of this reconstruction?
I'm sorry, Ted, ask that again if you don't mind.
Well, this is the first one that we've gone from the current roadway congestion is good to the future roadway congestion. So I assume that's after this project is considered poor. So I guess I'm wondering, obviously there's a lot of side benefits to the rest of the issues, but it's not really improving the movement of traffic flow. But was there any consideration to widening the road, adding either a fifth or a sixth lane when they were doing this project? Because if we're going to be in a position when this is done, still with poor congestion out there, then we're going to have to fix it at a later date.
Paul, jump in if I don't get this correct, but the congestion for the future roadway, that reflects if there are no improvements made. So that looks at the future model condition, taking into account the growth and development, I believe, and essentially says if no action is taken, this roadway will continue to deteriorate, growth will continue to occur out there, and you'll start seeing it go from it's not too bad now to it's a major issue out there throughout it. So that's why the project proposes to address with a capacity enhancement section. Did I say that right, Paul?
That's correct. And also it's worth noting that a regional travel demand model doesn't necessarily, it's not quite fine-tuned enough to accurately understand some of the refinements of non-capacity improvements that will alleviate congestion, but may not be reflected in the modeled content. So take it with a grain of salt. Rick described it correctly. So it's before any consideration of the project as the future condition is existing the same as it is today.
I understand. I apologize for that. I had thought you had said that the future roadway was the only one that was after change in conditions. So I appreciate that. Makes sense.
If it is left the way it is, it shows poor congestion in our modeled content. Yes.
I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Jamie Collier. I have a quick question. And maybe this is more, I don't know, policy based. So a lot of these collector roads that we've been seeing or whatever that need improvement are nearby major subdivisions, like this one's Rancho del Lago. I saw another one with a swirl bloom. So, and I guess why is this a PAG project, and why isn't the development impact fees covering these roadway expansions? Is that not part of the process when these large subdivisions get platted? I guess this is a question for Pima County, so.
I'll try to take a stab at it, but anybody else that wants to jump in, please feel free. So you are correct that when development goes in, there are impact fees collected. And in some cases, the growth and development may be directly attributable to those that were built. They were built within the time frame and they're eligible for collections. In some cases, the fees are not simply enough to provide the full scope of all the improvements that would be needed out there. So that's why you'll see a lot of these projects are supplemental regional improvements and benefits that are going to work on upgrading the entire corridor, not just specifically to where growth and development with a certain subdivision or certain development activity may have taken place. So you'll see some of these lengths, like in this case, stretching out over to 1.5 miles that would span several areas where there's a lot of growth and development activity.
I got it. So the impact fees, are they primarily just for the immediate neighborhood? I get asked this question all the time, so it's just, I'm trying to get educated.
In general, the impact fees are collected and then are attributed to the bigger roadways, the ones that are going to be more impacted on that. They're paid into a benefit collection area and they're eligible then on certain roadways. And most commonly it's applied to the bigger corridors like this. So in some cases, the benefit fees they may be collected, they're an ongoing collection, and they may not simply be adequate or enough to fulfill a regional project of this nature.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? Moving on. The next one is El Toro Road, another major collector from La Cañada Drive to La Villita Road, about 1.5 miles long. This one is a non-existing project, but it seems to align with 5 of our CAC goals. And Paul will address the performance measures a little later. Rick?
So as mentioned, this is going to construct and add basically several sections of the new lane roadway. It will be a fully functional, addressing drainage, bike ped, and providing all the necessary amenities so that it retains its full operational functionality. Down in the Sahuarita community, this is part of their town center district, and then it'll provide an additional east-west corridor stretching across the town's area.
Again, we're looking at existing condition performance data. So that's why we don't have existing condition performance data for this current facility. That doesn't exist. So that's largely what you'll see showing up as those NAs. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Thanks, Paul.
Paki, this is Tom. I wanted to ask Rick about this. It says, I see. I'm looking at 2 screens here. One from what Paki sent said a 2-lane roadway. Oh, this still does say 2-lane. 2-lane with curb and gutter doesn't sound like a standard section except in residential areas. And I do see there's a couple of intersecting streets. So how are you going to handle turn lanes on a road like this?
So as part of the refinement activity, we'll be working with the project sponsors, and as we do a deeper dive into the refined projects, those will be things that we'll be working to identify. Are there proper, what will the intersections need to look like, where there'll need to be additional turning lanes to facilitate better operations and ensure adequate capacity. In general, most of the project sponsors were recognizing either 2-lane, 3-lane, or 4-lane roadways, recognizing that those intersection conditions will be evaluated specifically if the project moves forward into the next round.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is John Bernal.
Go ahead, John.
Rick, isn't the El Toro I-19 connection one of the alternatives being explored under the Sonoran Corridor?
So under the Sonoran Corridor, it may have been in one of the earlier alternatives, and I'll touch more upon it when we get to the Sonoran Corridor, but the most recent refined list of alternatives for the Sonoran Corridor doesn't include El Toro anymore.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
And this is Arlen. I have another question here too. This identifies as meeting the goal of crosstown mobility. And the question I have is, so how long of a stretch of road to be constructed is actually meeting crosstown mobility? I understand if it's connecting to a larger system, and maybe this is, but right now it looks like it is the I-19 interchange from La Cañada to La Vita Road, and that's it. Is that crosstown mobility?
That's exactly one of the questions that you might want to save for when we start to talk about the CAC alignment and goals, Arlen.
Okay.
Yeah, Arlen, to answer that, yes, it does provide connection between those two big north-south corridors. But as Paki mentioned, whether that's adequate to be defined as crosstown mobility, that'll be the discussion for the CAC.
Yeah.
If I can go back, John, I misunderstood the reference, and my apologies. I had a different thought in mind on that. You are correct that the southern termini that has been identified as one of the key alternatives on the refined list for the Sonoran corridor is down and around the El Toro area. So I apologize. I had it confused and backwards on that.
So I assume then this project would somehow be held in abeyance or be given a similar designation to the Sonoran corridor?
At this point in time, the Sonoran corridor has not released their draft EIS with a preferred alternative. So this project that was submitted by the project sponsor has gone forward, recognizing it's a known item as opposed to one that's still in a study phase. I think if all those continue to move forward, if a build alternative or if an alternative that comes in conjunction with this, those will have to be refined and evaluated as those both efforts go forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this project?
John Holden, I have one.
Go ahead.
At the intersection with Interstate 19, would this be going over, going under, and how would the project be interfaced with the freeway? Is that something that ADOT would be included with on this, or is this something to be done locally?
I can't speak to the details as to whether it's going to be an over, under, or what the existing condition is out there. So I'm afraid I'm not familiar enough with that. But as far as the interaction with the interstate system, yes, that would have to be coordinated with ADOT to ensure that it doesn't impact the overall operations of the interstate facility.
Thank you.
And Paul, you had already addressed the performance measures, right? On this?
I did, yes.
Okay, moving forward, we've got Naranja Drive, major collector from La Cholla Boulevard to First Avenue. This one's about 3 miles in length, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals. And as you can see, it has 4 good and 2 poor performance measures.
So as I mentioned before, that several of these roadways where the existing 2-lane roadway does provide adequate capacity for the bulk of the traffic, but experiences operational hindrances in the form of turning vehicles that can block 1 or 2 lanes, depending on how that's all set up, and can create residual safety issues. So this continues the 3-lane section. It'll have all fully functional aspects with bike, drainage, pedestrian maneuvers as well. And then make sure it provides a fully continuous section on Naranja Drive. So the existing condition out there is primarily a 2-lane roadway, several side street access. That's the need for the 3rd way or the 2-way turning lane.
We do see some existing condition safety performance that is in need of attention for the segment itself. The intersections are performing at a fair level just thus far, but certainly you're going to want to look at that in comprehensive evaluation to look at both the roadway segment as well as the intersections.
Mr. Chairman, this is Diane.
Just a reminder. Sorry, who was that?
Mr. Chairman, this is Diane Shiflett.
Go ahead, Diane.
I'd like to just note that on the spreadsheet that we received, this project was, did meet CAC guidelines for wildlife crashes, but I noticed that's not on this particular slide. And also, it was noted for wildlife crashes, but without any details spelled out of how it was addressing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Again, that'll be something for the discussion on the CAC alignment and goals. So thanks for taking that making note of that. Any other questions on Naranja Drive? Tom, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to note a reminder to the committee that we will be looking at projects like this and asking how much they, they meet the goals of the CAC, but we'll also be looking at them for their regional importance, I think. And, whether a 3-lane road will typically be a regional facility or not. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be, I'm just saying that that's something that we'll want to talk about when the time comes.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
And this is Arlen. I have a question, not what's partly about this road, but just in general. When it says widen to 3 lanes, does that include the option? Because for example, at Naranja, there does not appear to be an awful lot of cross streets hitting along this particular segment. And although they may be planned, I'm not sure. But does that also include the possibility of it being widened to 3 where it needs to be, as opposed to the entire length, or is the assumption that it's the entire length?
I think at this point in time, the assumption is that it's the entire length, but as we get into the refinement process and work with the sponsors, evaluate those possibilities and opportunities, there may be stretches where it could be narrowed or a median could be put in, as long as that would preclude future connection points or inhibit or hinder any of the other operations. So that's probably a level of detail still to come. But for the initial project descriptions, it would suffice to say that that would be the idea, is it's a continuous section that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving forward. Let's see, just a second. Okay, this is the other Naranja Drive. This is another major collector from Shannon Road to Ironwood Ridge High School. This is a small lengthened project, about, I can't even see, 3.3 miles, I think, or 2.3. And
0.31.
Thank you. For some reason on this one, it's fuzzy. It aligns with most of the CAC goals, and as you can see, it's got two good performance measures, 3 poor, and several that need to be assessed. Rick?
To question Diane, you brought up, this is the one section. So there's 2 projects on Naranja reflecting the overall improvements to the continuous corridor. So this one does include those wildlife crashes that you were referring to. So just wanted to call that out, as that there were 2 different projects that had been submitted. And the reason for that is the segment from Ironwood Ridge to La Cholla has been built out as a 3-lane facility. So the one that we talked about previously on the east end, then this one on the west end would provide for a continuous 3-lane, 2-way left turn lane to address the turning vehicles, as well as then the fully functional aspects for bike, pedestrian, and the drainage elements as well.
As we look at existing condition performance data, recognize that we don't necessarily see a huge number of crashes, but for this type of facility, the crashes that are happening on the segment are a little bit higher than you would want to see on this type of facility for existing conditions. So bear that in mind. It's not exact numbers. It is what would you expect to see for this type of facility. So numbers are still relatively low, but there's some issues there that need some attention. I
was just going to point out, Diane, for the comment that you made, for the projects that sound similar, make sure to reference the project ID numbers. So that'll help to clarify. Thank you.
And this is Arlen, the comment that I made on the Naranja Drive before was really meant on this one. I didn't realize there were two. I skipped right over it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Arlen.
Arlen, the same thing would apply though. If there's benefit to a possible design mod, that would be considered, discussed as part of the refinement effort as to whether that kind of tweak would be advantageous or whether that may be a greater level of detail to handle during the implementation.
Okay, thanks.
This is Diane Shiflett.
Go, Dan.
Kapaki, you mentioned the ID numbers for the projects. That wasn't on my spreadsheet, so I really don't know how to identify the projects by number.
The Excel spreadsheet that you received has a column of project ID. So does the project summary you received, and then the slideshow that you received has the project IDs. I'll go back and look and see if there was something missing, but they are on there, and I can send you something afterward, Diane. Anything else on this one? The next one is Linda Vista Boulevard, and this one is a major collector from Calle Buena Vista to Oracle Road. It has the majority of the CAC goals are in alignment here, and as you can see, it's got majority of good performance measures, one poor, and one that needs to be assessed.
So as I've mentioned, kind of you're seeing the common theme now on several of the roadways that are being talked about today. This one proposes a 3-lane section. Essentially, Calle Concordia is seeing a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic avoids Calle Concordia and uses the Linda Vista Boulevard. So as the traffic continues to grow, the turning maneuvers, the accessibility from side streets or those turning onto side streets becomes kind of a key issue and gets exacerbated as that goes along. So in addition to addressing that, then this will provide all the other necessarily fully functional elements to ensure a fully functional corridor on there as well.
When we look at existing condition data, we do see some emerging issues related to pavement maintenance as well as intersection and segment safety. Those appear to currently be gravitating toward the State Route 77 Oracle Road east end of the section, but certainly something to take a closer look at.
There's a second Linda Vista Boulevard project, also a major collector. This one is from Hartman Lane to Bluebonnet Road. From Hartman Lane and Bluebonnet Road to Thornydale Road. This one's about 2 miles long. It meets about half of the CAC, or is aligned with about half of the CAC goals. It has 4 good performance measures and 4 poor performance measures.
So this project is now going to be a true capacity enhancement where it's proposing the 4 lanes, all the necessary amenities to address the ongoing growth, development, and activity that's handled up there on the northwest, as well as provide key connectivity up there. The interchange to the west is at the Twin Peaks area, and that's been built with part of RTA 1. And then there's planned extensions or connections over to Shannon Road on the east side of this. John, to questions you had received earlier, this project was called out in the assessment as possible for consideration to extend it to the west. And the 2 jurisdictions involved would be Pima County and the town of Marana.
So we see some existing condition issues around pavement. That's largely on the western section, but the eastern section is deteriorating as well, just not quite as quickly. According to the roughness index, and we see some safety performance for both roadway and segment with this facility. You'll also note we're in an environmentally sensitive area. Again, not a barrier per se, but something to be considered. And we see poor sidewalk presence for the facility that exists today.
Mr. Chair, Brian Keeley.
Go ahead.
From personal experience, I think most people realize that my full-time job is with Northwest Fire District. And when we speak to safety on this one, it says at intersections, it's fair and roadway is poor. This is one particular area where for both motor vehicle, pedestrian, and cyclist, over the years, we have seen significant incidents at this intersection, largely because the high school is there in the corner, and some of those have been fatal. So when we talk to safety, this is just from personal experience, one that really checks the box across all modes of travel.
It certainly does appear to be emerging set of issues out there based on the first glance of data here. Indeed.
This is Joanne Sabat.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Hi, is there a way to indicate or prioritize when we have somebody who is a first responder? Is there a way to have our information so is that if we were having to make choices, we can, for my personal opinion, would be definitely we want to get this taken care of. Is there a way to designate or have some sort of input from first responders?
This is Brian Keeley. Sorry, I opened a can of worms on that one.
You dear.
I think as far as the CAC goes forward, Paul or Pocky, jump in, obviously, if you want to add anything. That'll be critical discussion as to what experiences, knowledge, familiarity. That'll be probably part of the discussion as the various members go through, identify, decide how to prioritize, and if that should carry any weight or not. The overall safety aspect of it, I think, includes elements that would be in addition to what first responders would see as far as actual accidents. There's always the near miss factor. There's always the risk aspect that we want to try to incorporate as well. So I think we've tried to reflect that as far as the overall performance measures aspect, but anything above and beyond that that the committee would choose to use, I think that would probably be more in your purview.
Mr. Chair, this is Chris Schmaltz. Yeah, my viewpoint on that is that we want to be careful about relying on data versus anecdotal input. I think it's very important that that be a part of, especially if there's actual data that the PAG team can present to us that speaks to those safety related issues. But I would hesitate to introduce sort of anecdotal, we see kind of input for the group when we're assessing various elements of a proposed project. If there's a way to sort of gather that data from the PAG team to present that as part of safety analysis, I definitely want to hear that, but it needs to be the data associated with it versus anecdotal reports about segments. That's my view on that.
We would be able to provide that as we go forward on whichever projects is desired. The assessment here that Paul has been providing is definitely a subjective reflection of all that, but there is data that supports that, backs that up, and we have actual numerical information on that.
So these categories are actually based on 2014 to 18 data. As we look at similar facility types of this type of cross-section, we have developed what's called safety performance functions that essentially what we're looking at is how does this type of facility compare to its similar facilities. And so it's a starting place to understand more about, okay, if there's segment safety issues, what are the nature of those? And then we can look into the data itself to understand what types of crashes are happening, or what times of day, what are the conditions of those crashes. So it is very much built on data. It doesn't quite give you all the data up at once. It just tells you where more attention may be needed.
To add to that, the prioritization discussion may be focused on the data, and that'd be exclusive, and that'd be appropriate to do as we get into the refinement, and if projects or whichever projects move forward, if there's any additional design features, elements, that we want to take as much a holistic picture as possible, looking at risks, making sure we have good understanding on cause and effect so that we can incorporate those into the full project scope description as well as the reflective cost.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
The next project is Los Reales Road, another major collector from Sheridan Avenue, known as Ignacio Bamea, I think, to Camino de Oeste. This is about a mile in length. It meets half of the, it's aligned with half of the CAC goals and does not have any performance measures at this time.
As I mentioned before, this is down on the southwest side. So this roadway is an existing 2-lane roadway, but it winds up needing to, or it provides an awful lot of relief to some of the other facilities there that service the tribe. So upgrades and then also accommodating any future development that is planned for the area as well. So needing the necessary upgrades to address the traffic and operational issues, as well as the drainage that I talked about earlier for Camino de Oeste. So this would provide that 3-lane facility fully functional with all the necessary drainage, pedestrian, and bike amenities as well.
So the majority of this does not contain existing condition data. So that's why you're not seeing categories here for these data performance measures.
Kinney Road is next, a major collector from Ajo Highway to Bop Road. This one's about, about half a mile, and it aligns with the majority of the CAC goals. It's got 2 good performance measures and 5 poor.
So this project is to once again improve the capacity, provide the full functionality in the form of all-weather crossings, take care of the drainage issues, and improve the multimodal aspects of it as well. While there have been a number of smaller improvements that have been out there, it's not been the whole collective approach to the whole corridor. So essentially the others have been part of larger projects. This has the chance to bring it in with one complete project.
So we see existing condition data showing issues in pavement. Recognize that we're looking at 2015 through 18 roughness index, so it may not be quite up to date, but there are still issues that need attention there. And then we see some flagging performance both at the intersection level as well as the roadway segment itself. We do see some future roadway congestion for the non-built 2045 network for the existing facility as it is today, and poor sidewalk performance.
This is Arlen. This is Kinney Road. This is one where the shopping center is supposed to be on the northwest corner. It's supposed to contribute to additional fixing of that road, not to create full 4 lanes, I don't think, but certainly to expand it from a safety standpoint and such.
Thanks, Arlen. The next one is Drexel Road, major collector from Cardinal Avenue to Mission Road. This is about a mile long, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals, has 3 good performance measures and 5 poor.
So this facility, mostly an existing 2-lane roadway, probably a combination of graded or slightly paved shoulders. So the idea, as we've been mentioning, is to put in a 2-lane left turn lane, then address some of the drainage issues and make sure that the appropriate bike and pedestrian facilities are added as well. Basically to address the overall operations, accessibility, and safety aspects of that.
Indeed, we see existing condition showing pavement in need of attention, as well as safety at both the intersection level and the segment level. And as Rick mentioned, sidewalk presence is in need of attention. We are in an environmentally sensitive area, so there is a high intersect there. So that's why that environmental impact score shows as poor.
Next up is Northern Avenue, Calle Buena Vista. It's a major collector from McGee Road to Linda Vista Boulevard. It's 2 miles in length, aligns with half of the CAC goals, has 4 good performance measures and 3 poor.
So this is another corridor where we're seeing an awful lot of traffic, some of it diverting off of Highway 77, some of it accessing the CDO High School up in the area. So it gets a fair share of vehicular traffic as well as bike and pedestrians. In addition, it also has a number of at-grade drainage crossings as well. So the project would then address that and provide the full 3-lane facility, all the necessary functional amenities, and take care of all those deficiencies at the same time.
Existing condition performance shows need to take a look at pavement maintenance, certainly. And then the segment largely to the north is underperforming a bit. We do see some fair performance at the intersection level, but I think the entire corridor could serve to have some more attention there. And then we see poor existing sidewalk presence as well.
Marianne Cleveland Way is next, major collector from Vista del Lago to Colossal Cave Road. It's about 1.7 miles in length, aligns with more than half of the CAC goals. It has 2 good performance measures and 3 poor performance measures.
So this project can be thought of it as the western companion piece to the Colossal Cave improvements that were described earlier. So this essentially now goes west of Colossal Cave, goes through all that development area where the schools are and the 4-lane capacity sections needed to handle all the extra increase in traffic that's been seen out there, as well as address the operational safety drainage concerns that are associated with that area as well. To the point that was brought up earlier, this project was identified in the assessment as a possible consideration to extend it further to the west to match into Houghton Road. And the 2 jurisdictions out there are Pima County and City of Tucson.
So existing condition performance shows pavement again in need of attention, as well as the roadway segment itself is underperforming from a safety perspective. We do see a little bit of slippage in the intersection level safety performance that could go use some attention as well. And then the sidewalk presence in the current condition is poor.
Old Nogales Highway Corridor, major collector from Continental Road, Nogales Highway. This is about 5 miles in length, aligns with almost all of the CAC goals, has 4 good performance measures and 3 poor performance measures.
So this project is also being on a bigger route, being a capacity enhancement. It recommended to propose the 4-lane section that would include still the same amenities that any fully functional corridor would, with drainage, bike and pedestrian maneuvers as well, and then any other supplemental features that are needed. So it essentially provides the congestion relief and addresses the capacity needs throughout that entire section of area.
All right, as we look at the existing condition performance, we do see some slipping for the pavement there. We are looking at some intersection safety issues. And again, as a reminder, those are looking exclusively at the signalized set of intersections when we're looking at that safety performance function or level of safety service. Both the intersection and the segment are poor and fair, so certainly some attention needs to be put there to understand the underlying conditions of that performance. And then we see poor ranking of existing condition sidewalk presence and a high intersect with the environmental impact, which shows up as poor.
Hey, Paul, it's Tom. Can you expand a little bit on the environmental impact? Is that because of the sawmill canyon?
You know, I don't have. Sure, I don't really have the specifics of what the facility is. There appears to be priority riparian area that parallels the facility and crosses through it as well. And so I think that intersect is why it shows up as a poor ranking for environmental impact.
Okay.
Any other questions on this? I believe the next project this is one that we switched, so you may not find it on your list. So the next one is La Cañada Drive. It should be number 1509. And we moved this one. This is a major collector, and it's widening from 2 to 4 lanes from Camino Sueño to Sahuarita to north of El Toro Road. This is over 2 miles long, aligns with the majority of the CAC goals, and has 4 good performance measures.
This roadway is an existing 2-lane roadway, and essentially what it's going to do is the proposals to go to a 4-lane, all the necessary fully functional aspects would be included. There's a great deal of industrial employment area that's been targeted on the west side of the roadway that is expected to receive future development opportunities as well as current interests. So it's making sure that it accommodates that, can incorporate all that, provide necessary accessibility, as well as fully functional operations for all that.
So important to note here, in the existing condition performance data, we don't see intersection data for safety or congestion. This is because both of those categories are looking at current signalized intersections for the crash experience, as well as the regional synchro model. That's where the congestion of intersections data comes from. So no data there, but still need of attention on the pavement and the segment safety, roadway performance, and then considerations to be taken when looking at environmental impact.
John Holden with a question.
Yes, John.
Okay, does this intersect with the proposal for the El Toro across I-19? Or is this a separate, non-connected program?
So the El Toro project that was earlier referenced, this is the corridor. So if both projects were to survive, move forward, and go into a further state of refinement, that interface between those two and that specific intersection modifications would be appropriately determined as to which one's going to be carry the bulk of those improvements. Typically, the bigger arterial would be responsible for that, but it's also a function of when in the plan that may occur. For instance, if one is targeted for period 5 versus another one for period 7, that would be thought through as well. So the exact interface of what those intersection configurations and that crossing maneuver would look like, still to be determined.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Diane Shiflett.
Yes, Diane.
I'm just curious, looking at a picture of this intersection, it seems there are some railroad tracks. Are those addressed anywhere in this plan?
I'm not aware of any, Diane, so I'd have to look into that. Any kind of railroad facility, be it even if it's just a spur line, would need to be incorporated, addressed, and evaluated.
Any other questions on this La Cañada Drive project? Okay, the next one is Harrison Road. This is a minor collector project. It goes from I-10 to Southeastern Employment and Logistics Center, which is the Pima County Fairground. It's about 3 miles in length. It aligns with half of the CAC goals. It has 3 good performance measures and 1 poor.
So the purpose of this project and the main intent is to provide the connectivity, the accessibility. As Pocky mentioned, it's aiming for the southeast employment and logistics area that Pima County has been working on. So this provides all the necessary connectivity for that area with a fully functional and appropriately designed roadway.
So existing condition performance shows some deterioration on the pavement side. and some emerging issues for the segment performance from a safety perspective. Again, you don't see intersection safety data or congestion intersection data, as there's no signalized intersections on this particular facility, but you do see poor existing conditions for sidewalk presence.
What's that little jog there that connects? Is it Rita Road at I-10?
I believe that is Rita, that is west of Houghton, correct? I believe that's the next one up.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't imagine there'd be much of any sidewalk presence because nobody lives there.
That's right. Not a surprise, right? Yeah.
Paved shoulder, yeah, we would wind up making sure that we design the, you know, evaluate the paved shoulder functions, bikes, peds through that way.
So this is Jamie. I got a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Does ADOT have any plans to do a frontage road along there? Because it seems like this Rocket, whatever it's called, road, Harrison Road, seems like that would interfere with any eventual frontage road, wouldn't it?
So the proposal of this project, we want to make sure we work with both the sponsor as well as ADOT on that. As we talked about during the first review of the first 40 projects, there are significant improvements planned for this segment of Interstate 10. So we want to make sure that those are all compatible in there.
Okay.
Realizing that this graphic pictorial is just kind of more for spatial relation, location information as opposed to actual design.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is Palisades Road. This is another minor collector. It goes from First Avenue to 1 mile east. This is about a mile in length. It aligns with 5 of the CAC goals, and it has a majority of good performance measures and 1 poor.
So this is another segment of roadway where the project had existing conditions, primarily 2-lane, minimal if non-existent pedestrian and bike facilities. However, there is a lot of traffic out there. There is a lot of side street access at the eastern end, as you can see in the graphic. And there is a lot of bike and ped activity that connects to the eastern recreational pathways and trails. So the full 3-lane section on that would be then proposed to accommodate making sure that all the bike ped facilities and amenities are included, as well as the turning lanes for the vehicular access.
Mr. Chair, this is Kevin Farnton.
Yeah, Kevin.
I just want to let you know, Rick, Palisades recently got a multi-use path on the north side of the road, all the way from First Avenue back into that development.
Back in the north side, you said?
Yeah, north side of the road.
Okay.
Right. So what you see on the existing condition performance, that's not showing up. So it still notes as a poor sidewalk presence. So take that with a grain of salt, knowing what Kevin has shared today. The other performance measures are pretty straightforward. We do see some emerging issues on the pavement and roadway segment safety sides that are in need of a little bit of attention.
The next one is Calle Tetecusum, minor collector road from Sheridan Avenue, Ignacio Bamea to Camino Benem. This is just under a mile, and it aligns with half of the CAC goals and no performance measures at this time.
Similar to what I described earlier with Los Reales, the existing roadway out there is primarily a 2-lane roadway, but there's a lot of open vacant parcels and expected development coming on behalf of the tribe. So in anticipation of that and ensure that the roadway is functional, serves all the area adequately, and addresses all the drainage concerns, then a full 3-lane section is proposed to address and be able to accommodate all that, provide the necessary mobility, and ensure safe and effective operations.
And no existing condition performance data available for this facility at this point.
This is Arlen. These several that are near the Pasquayaki area and historic roads that were there oftentimes before, the flood, taking care of the flood control issues on these roads without causing backup problems to the south. I'm just, if they're going to be built to pass the 100-year standard, it's going to be a much higher road than everything else around it.
And Arlen, to your point, I think that's going to be part of the, if this project makes it through the refinement process, working closely with the sponsors out there to make sure that we look at effective and adequate ways to accommodate that, plus minimize the impact. Some of these, you're exactly correct. That becomes a real trade-off as to when you raise something and cause a lot of problems versus trying to let the water overtop that. And that's acknowledged is going to be a significant challenge out there, as all the roadway projects that have been addressed in that area have experienced.
Yeah.
It is a tricky area on the southwest side. You are correct.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I'm trying to picture that.
Challenging.
Yeah.
Thanks, Arlen. The next one is La Villita Road. This is a minor collector from Sahuarita Road to Nogales Highway. This is a little over 3 miles in length, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and does not have any performance measures at the moment.
All right, so this roadway then extends the existing roadway, so it's mostly a 2-lane facility that only goes part of the way. This continues it all the way down and then adds the necessary bike and pedestrian amenities throughout the entire length. So full connection to the major south end, north end corridors is achieved, as well as the full functionality throughout the length of it. This is also part of the town center efforts that are going on down there within the town's limits.
As Pocky mentioned, no existing condition performance of data available for this facility.
Desert Fairways is next, another minor collector from La Cañada Drive to Holden Springs Drive. This is under 1 mile long, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and again, no performance measures on this one.
So this is an existing 2-lane existing roadway that comes through and is kind of the central east-west roadway in the Rancho Vistoso area, with more road to the south and the La Cañada Pebble to the north. It does experience an awful lot of traffic, plus there is a school that's located there in the middle of it, so appropriate turning access to address backups and those key operational issues, as well as provide the necessary bike, pedestrian, and full functional improvements that go along with that to ensure safe and effective operations, along with any proximity to any school. So that project proposes to take care of all that.
As you see more and more of these minor collectors, it's not a surprise that we won't have existing condition performance data for some of these facilities. So bear that in mind.
This next one we switched. This is now we jumped to Sonoran Quarter. The Sahuarita project used to be here. We moved it, as you saw earlier. So the Sonoran Corridor, this is what we're putting into our to be determined category. New facility, new limited access roadway connector between between I-19 and I-10. This is scheduled to be about 13 miles in length and aligns with about half of our CAC goals.
So as Pocky mentioned, this is where we introduce a new designation. So several of the remaining projects are going to fall within that categorization. So the classification of TBD was developed, and essentially it includes the following 3 primary items. It's not all inclusive, but it was intended to give us a place where we could capture these type of roadways. First and foremost, if we have brand new alignments where there's no existing data, no existing roadways there, so we can't fulfill or designate or classify anything. 2, we also came up with that designation to reflect those type of projects that have been submitted that may be considered more singular purpose, singular focus. So they don't quite have that full range of all the necessary improvements while they still provide a necessary benefit. It was selected more in terms of it's got a single way of getting there and single way of achieving that. And lastly, there's, in case there were any roadways that were on a lower classification than a minor collector, as Paul talked about just a few minutes ago. So the remaining projects that fall into that are in that TBD category that kind of encompasses those type of roadways, those type of proposed projects.
So Rick, your audio went out right as you described what this new category is. Is it TBD or what exactly?
Yeah, new category is TBD.
Okay,
and it essentially encompasses the brand new roadways that are on absolutely no existing alignment. So there's a brand new roadway being identified or proposed. Also,
I only missed
came through?
I only missed the statement of what you were calling it. Sorry.
My apologies. I'm sorry. I didn't think any of it came through. Okay. Yep. Just TBD is that last classification.
Okay.
And so
now,
with
to add, if I can,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Now, specific to the Sonoran corridor on that, the reason why this project is shown the way it is with a single line and then no specific alternative, this project is still going through the environmental impact statement with ADOT as the lead agency on that. A draft environmental document is not scheduled to be released until now November or December of this year as they coordinate the hearing efforts and the public outreach with the Federal Highway Administration. So until that document is released, a build or a preferred alternative has not been identified. So it just is represented with a simple description connecting I-10 and I-19 and with connection to major employment centers within the area as outlined in the purpose and need, and then a simple line representing the connection between those 2 points.
And as mentioned, we won't see existing condition performance data for proposed new facilities.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bruce Wright.
Go ahead, Bruce.
The Sonoran corridor, along with the projects that we heard about on I-10 at our last meeting, are probably the largest and most expensive projects we'll consider, and ones that will span potentially the entire 20-year period of this new authorization. It seems to me that it would be really helpful when we get into considering both the I-10 improvements and this new corridor that 2 items be brought forward to inform the committee. And first is, what would be the potential funding sources, federal, state, and local, and how RTA funding would factor into that? And secondly, I think it would be really helpful for the committee to get a briefing on the trends that are projected for trade with Mexico and its impact on these roadways. I sit on the Arizona-Mexico Commission Board of Directors, and last week we were briefed on projected increase in trade and its impact on roadways. And I think it would be very helpful for the committee to hear that information as it considers this set of projects.
Okay, got the
Thank you,
notes.
Bruce.
Thank you for the comments.
Any other comments on Sonoran corridor? The next one is the Dove Mountain Boulevard extension. Another, from here forward, these will all be under the TBD category to be determined. This is from western terminus of Dove Mountain Boulevard to the eastern terminus of Cochee Canyon Trail. This is a little over 4 miles in length, and it aligns with 2 of the CAC goals, and obviously no performance measures at this time.
So the intent and the purpose of this project is to provide the additional connectivity and accessibility then coming in there from the north end into the Dove Mountain area and development up there. Also, by providing this connection, it helps alleviate and release some of the potential pressure or as growth and development continues, and help preserve the capacity of the Tangerine corridor that is part of RTA 1.
Paul, I don't know if you want to add anything to these or.
Nothing really to add here. New facility, no existing condition performance data.
This is Arlen. I have a question. The map ends at before Cochee Canyon Trail perhaps intersects with the frontage road of I-10. And I'm just curious as to what happens if this is bringing it out there into what looks like a residential street, local residential street, unless it's designed to be a collector arterial or something. I don't know the standards for the existing Cochi Canyon Trail as it's going through the subdivision, and then where it connects to the freeway, or is there a proposed connection to the freeway there?
I'm afraid I don't have those details, Arlen. That would have to be something we'd look into a little further and determine what the exact connections, locations, and existing conditions that they would tie into and match into. That we'd have to research and refine and get back to you on.
Rick, this is Brian Keeley.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jamshid, if you'd allow me.
Yeah, Jamshid, and then Brian will get you right after that.
Jamshid, I was gonna provide the background, but Jamshid's gonna be able to answer that better than I will. So disregard my request.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Cochi Canyon is what it's called on the north side of I-10. On the south side, it's the Marana Senderio interchange. So the section that this TBD line will connect to is at least a major collector and designed as such to carry that kind of traffic. Does not have direct residential or any of those kinds of characteristics. So it's a connection to the I-10 freeway. That's all I really wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Bernal.
Yeah, John.
Jamshid, is there any consideration with bringing Dove Mountain down to Tangerine? Today, it's just a long cul-de-sac from what I know. Rather than going due west to I-10?
John and others, yes, certainly that's an open question. We do want to eventually connect to I-10, or it could be through Tangerine Boulevard as well. There is opportunity there to explore that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Dove Mountain?
Yeah, John Holden with another one.
Okay, John.
Okay, it just seems, tenuous, how far out we're looking on this, because this could be at the far end of the new projects coming up here over time and such. But it almost seems to be under planning just to have a proposal for just a 2-lane divided roadway out there, perhaps looking to the future that go ahead and lay it out there for make it a 4-lane to handle what could be a lot of growth over the next 20 to 40 years. Again, it's something that's too far out probably on this at this point. It's not going to be probably on the very short term for expansion on that, but it seemed to be kind of under designed.
So as part of our refinement effort, and as we're doing detailed evaluations on the scopes and the cost estimates on the projects that are then make it through the kind of the initial draft list, those will be discussions that we intend to have with the project sponsors, is to ensure that the horizon year and the needs of the functionality, the capacity benefits will all be met on that. So those will be discussions we would intend to have, not only what the main facility would do, but also to how it ties in, intersection modifications, things like that. Want to make sure that that achieves the functionality, connectivity, and accessibility that's envisioned by the sponsors.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
All right, moving on. Palo Verde Road. This is from Bilby Road to 44th Avenue. This is a little over 3 miles in length, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and most of the performance measures are good on this one.
So the existing facility out there is a multi-lane facility, multi-lane roadway. However, there is a lot of traffic out there, a lot of access points, a lot of commercial business centers out there, as well as a lot of stop and go type of efforts, activities, and generators. as well as a lot of bike and ped activity along the corridor as well, and transit facilities there also. So the upgrade would then provide the necessary full functionality of that corridor along that length.
Existing conditions do show a little slippage in pavement as well as intersection safety. We do see poor safety rating of the roadway segment itself and low sidewalk presence as well.
Street is next. This is from 4th Avenue to 6th Avenue. This is under a mile in length. It aligns with half of the CAC goals. It has 3 good performance measures and 1 poor.
So primarily, this is just a single lane access road right now that abuts the southern end of neighborhood and the commercial center in there. And the intent on that would be to improve the connectivity and the accessibility, as well as the walkability, and enhance the overall area that goes through there. So essentially would provide now a good alternate route that would be fully functional in its intent.
While this is a fairly short segment, we see pavement segment safety and sidewalk presence in need of attention.
This is Arlen. You said a single lane street? Not
right now, yeah, it kind of serves, there's no dividing striping or lane out there. Appears based on width that, you know, you could probably get a couple of vehicles to pass, but it would be tight. So I consider that more of functionality as a single lane facility where it allows two-way traffic.
Is it
But it
paved?
doesn't have any of the single striping or the center line striping or dividing that you would typically see on a normal 2-lane roadway.
Is it paved, and is the same situation on 40th Street to the west of 6th Avenue?
Let's see, it is paved as far as the existing condition, and west, it is primarily a back access roadway for several of the businesses in that area. And I believe, no, I'd be stepping out of my bounds if I described it any better than that.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mary. Can I ask a quick question about that one? Is that encompassed in South Tucson?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks.
John Holden with another question on that. Does that 40th Street intend to abut the crossing over Union Pacific and go on over to Park with the Tucson Marketplace?
No, I believe its eastern end terminus is at 6th Avenue. I'm not aware, and the project sponsor made no suggestions about continuing any further.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on 40th? All right. Next, we have La Cholla Boulevard Extension. This goes from Tangerine Road to Oracle Junction. It is 10 miles in length and aligns with half of the CAC goals, no performance measures.
So this would be a brand new corridor. It's been in the long range corridor plans for a while. As the growth and development up in northern Pima and the community Catalina and southern Pinal County continue, the improvements on Highway 77 may warrant additional capacity needs in the future, thus prompting the desirability for an alternate corridor that would better serve the area. So it would be done in conjunction with the ADOT effort, and that's essentially how it's being proposed.
New proposed facility, no existing condition performance data.
Mr. Chair, this is Carolyn. This one is a real surprise. That's been talked about and thrown out or thrown in the trash can many times. So, but I did want to ask, who was this from Oro Valley or from Pima County? Whose proposal is this?
The project sponsor on this one is Oro Valley, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Next, we have Abra Valley Road Extension and I-10 traffic interchange. This is constructing a 2-lane road with a new grade separated traffic interchange over the railroad tracks. It's a little over 2 miles, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and new facility, no performance measures.
So as you're hearing with the common theme with these new alignments, new roadways, new extensions, and new connections, the primary driver is for the additional connectivity, the accessibility, and then help preserve the capacity of the main facilities that have already been widened, improved, or built. So to allow adequate alternative options and ensure that the overall grid system then functions as best as possible.
Again, new proposed facility, no existing condition performance data.
Next, we have the Snyder Road Bridge. This would construct a new bridge on Snyder Road over the Sabino Creek. This is under 1 mile in length, aligns with most of the CAC goals, and no performance measures.
So Snyder Road,
Hey, sorry, this is Tom just making an editorial comment. This one almost ended my career as an engineer 15 years ago.
Yes,
so this
I will-
one was submitted by Tom under the guise of a pseudonym, which I don't remember which, you have with a different acronym, Tom Engineering Company. Yeah. Yes, Snyder Road has been around for a while. So this is a proposal, as many of you probably are familiar with, to build the bridge facility, connect the east and west side across Sabino Creek. The primary driver is to provide connectivity as well as an alternate route in addition to just Tanca Verde, which is the only facility that connects the east side and the west side across Tanca Verde. Or sorry, across Sabino Creek.
No existing condition roadway or bridge, so no data there.
Well, Mr. Chair,
This is Dale Calvert. This was a major discussion in 2005, 2006. Spent hours and hours. Basically, it was speared by the Board of Supervisors, and I recognize that the Board of Supervisors is completely different at this point. But is there real interest on this from Pima County at this point? Are they willing to really think about this? And then I think there was some real concept of the project at that time that was a bridge that was much longer than actually needed to get over the area to support wildlife and one thing or another. And I think there may be some changes on attitudes from environmental groups on that. Has there been any discussion or anything about that, or is that just be determined?
Mr. Chair, this is Carolyn. Just to reiterate that point and hopefully answer questions, this was the most controversial project, except for maybe Grant Road, which ended up being put into the plan, but this one got taken out. There are, as far as the environmental impact, I think there's been studies done. This is one of those reoccurring projects that's been from the county over many, many years. And so I'm not surprised to see it back again, but there are myriad reports about environmental sensitivity. And there is a different Board of Supervisors, but this has been on the county administrator's list. It kind of never went away. So I don't know anything about the design, but I can't imagine, Dale, that there is going to be any change of attitude on the part of the environmental groups about this. So I'm just warning the committee. I think it's going to be another pretty hot button item if this gets included.
To answer the design question, so the I believe as this project has evolved over the years and as the evaluations, the estimates as they've been updated, impact assessments have been considered. All those items, those are ongoing, making sure that it properly, first and foremost, is compliant with all laws, codes, policies, and regulations, but along the way that any and all the necessary components can be accommodated as much as possible. So I know that there have been update efforts that have taken place within the county during that time frame. And if this project were to survive, move forward, that would be part of our refinement effort to make sure that the scope is adequate and that the cost estimates and necessary appurtenances, amenities, and items are all properly reflected and captured in that. So,
This is Joanne Sabah with a question.
Okay, Joanne.
If memory serves me correct, and it may not, wasn't there some excavating done in that area? Someone is claiming to find artifacts and things, and is it rumor? Was it disproved? Does anyone else remember this?
I do not.
I'm not aware of anything that's happened out there. The project sponsors have not brought that or raised that. But to that end, that would be part of our ongoing and our scope development effort if this project makes it through and passes on into the next round. That type of evaluation would make sure we do that adequately and appropriately. So if that is a required activity or expected to be encountered, we would do the proper research into that to discover what can be expected out there and what would be reasonable in terms of mitigation as well as avoidance.
Thank you. And again, I can't remember if it was proved or disproved. It could have been somebody trying to stop another project. I just remember the headlines or the article, I'm sorry.
I think it's recognized to be an environmentally sensitive area that could have potential cultural sensitivity, and it would be treated and respected accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Trail Crossing Boulevard Extension. This is from Nogales Highway to Old Nogales Highway. This is over a mile, about 1.75 miles, aligns with most of the CAC goals and no performance measures at this time.
So this is a new roadway and bridge crossing over the Santa Cruz, being driven by a lot of the development activity, the need for connectivity, as well as then some commercial development that's planned down in the community in that area. So this would be to design and construct the ultimate configuration down there, spanning the Santa Cruz River in the appropriate configuration.
Nothing to add here. New facility, no existing condition performance data.
Campbell Avenue. This goes from Quail Crossing Boulevard to Sahuarita Road. This is about 5 miles long, aligns with almost all of the CAC goals, and again, no performance measures.
Similar to what you've been hearing all along is accessibility, making sure that alternate facilities are provided to ensure capacity and operations are met on the existing facilities, and then in conjunction with the anticipated growth and development out there.
Proposed new facility, no existing condition performance data.
This next project is different than on your sheet, even though it's La Cañada. This is the La Cañada Drive as a TBD. And this is what we're saying is being reserved for discussion on future categoricals. This is from Cañada Hills to Community Center Drive, the pedestrian facility. It's under a half mile in length. It aligns with one of the CAC goals. It has 2 poor performance measures and 4 good ones.
So as I mentioned when I was describing the TBD categorization, one of those was to include or provide a grouping for those that may be just targeted on one specific scope element or one specific type of improvement. So that's why this is reserved for that discussion. This has been a project that's been identified for a while. The west side of La Cañada currently lacks any kind of pedestrian facilities, yet the La Cañada corridor experiences a high degree of pedestrian activity, bike activity throughout the whole length. So at this point in time, any users out there have to cross over La Cañada to get to the east side.
Bear in mind, as you look at the buffer around the project area, we are pulling data from the existing facility of La Cañada Drive. While some of it may not necessarily be exactly pertinent to the pedestrian facility project, it's certainly good to have for reference as well.
And again, the other La Cañada project was moved to under the major collector category. They were together before, but they're separated so that we can group them. The next one is the 4th Avenue Heritage Trolley. Again, this one is reserved for discussion on future categoricals, as Rick explained that. This was mistakenly written as a major collector. But it's categorized as a 2BD, and it goes from 26th Street to I-10 Frontage Road. It's a little over a mile in length, and it aligns with 3 of the CAC goals. It has 3 poor performance measures and 4 good performance measures.
So the primary driver on this project is basically to enhance the economic development, the opportunities along 4th Avenue between 26th Street and then the I-10 frontage road where it dead ends. That's basically through the South Tucson Entertainment District, so it provides nice growth opportunities for that kind of enhanced economic and commercial development.
So the existing condition performance data does show some safety issues that are in need of attention, as well as poor sidewalk presence of the facility. Pavement appears to be heading in the wrong direction, so need of attention there as well.
The next one is Camino Cocoim. This goes from Calle Torim to Los Reales Road, adds sidewalks and bike lanes. It's about a half mile in length, aligns with about half of the CAC goals and no performance measures, and again, reserved for discussion on future categoricals.
So the existing facility is primarily just a 2-lane neighborhood route. It is served by transit, but it lacks any kind of pedestrian or bicycle facilities you can find out there. So essentially the intent is to then improve the pedestrian connectivity and then allow it to better serve the neighborhood area.
No existing condition performance data for this facility.
Just a note to remind everyone, it looks like this one, along with a couple of the others, may end up as categorical, be considered not in these major roadway projects.
Thank you, Tom. The next one is Camino Potom, reserved also for discussion on future categoricals. This is from south of Calle Tetacusim to Calle Torim. This is under a mile in length, and it aligns with half of the CAC goals, no performance measures.
Very similar to the previous one, in which the existing area out there lacks any kind of pedestrian or bike facilities, predominantly a existing just neighborhood street, but does serve by a has a bus route along there serving the neighborhood in the area. So the project proposes to add the necessary pedestrian facilities to then upgrade that for the neighborhood connectivity.
So existing condition performance data is not available, even though Rick knows some details of the project area. It's not necessarily in our data sets.
This is Arlen. I have a question. Is there any reason given for it just being this particular location as opposed to heading up toward Los Reales with the collector? It looks like on the previous map for Cocoim, this road, Potom, goes all the way to the Los Reales.
Did you want to see the one, Arlen?
I'm sorry.
Did you want to see the other road that you referenced?
Well, I'm just looking at this road. This one, the road goes apparently from Calle Torim up to Los Reales, but it was only identified for sidewalks on a portion of it. as opposed to the one on Cocoim to the west, which goes all the way to Los Reales. I'm just wondering if there was a reason why it didn't go, or should it go? If it's, if we're looking at it.
The specific project limits, Arlen, weren't provided. I mean, they were called out by the sponsoring, by the project sponsor, but I'm afraid I don't know the exact details. I do know the southern terminus on Calle Torim does reflect the primary east-west corridor there across the tribal properties in the tribal area, but I couldn't tell you why the northern one was identified south of Tetakusum.
Yeah, and the reason I'm saying is it would tie it in a little bit more with a regional thing if it went up to Los Reales.
As I've been mentioning, if this project survives and moves on through the refinement effort and into the ones that will require a little deeper analysis, a little further dive and evaluation, those will be items we look at as, are there more appropriate project limits that are better served, better reflective? We've identified some of those in the assessment document that was provided to you, but others, anything surviving on that would go through that same evaluation.
The next one, I think it's the last, is 10th Avenue. This is another reserved for discussion on future categoricals. It goes from 33rd Street to 42nd Street. It's less than a mile, it's about half a mile in length, aligns with about half of the CAC goals. It has 4 performance measures and 2 poor ones.
So this is a situation where you have 2 recreational pathways in the form of the South El Paso Southwestern Greenway that's been undergoing a series of improvements, and then the Chuck Huckleberry Loop that's down the Julian Wash. And this would simply then provide a pathway to ensure functional connectivity as well as safe and effective location for bikes and peds to use getting between those 2 recreational facilities.
Existing condition performance does show some poor pavement. Within the safety category, there are issues involving both cyclists and pedestrians underneath that roadway safety designation. So certainly something to keep in mind.
I'm going to go back to something, if I may, Mr. Chair and Pocky, that Arlen mentioned, and I think this would apply to other projects as appropriate by the CAC. We did identify some of the ones that had more possibility for a project extension or to different project ending points or project limits. While we did just a few of the ones that stuck out, they're certainly open for discussion and refinement as the discussions go forward, that if more appropriate end limits are suspected, identified, or wish to be suggested or recommended, then those would be incorporated into our efforts as well.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Bernal. Rick, since you mentioned that, the project that I'd like to, I don't think is on our list today, but has a long, long history similar to Snyder Road, is Mission Road between Valencia and Drexel. I think it's been largely an issue of acquiring right away from Autumn, but I'm wondering if that's anywhere on anybody's list.
What were the limits you said, John? Valencia to Drexel?
Drexel. Yeah, that's 1 mile that's constantly flooded and causes a lot of service disruption in that part of town.
It was not part of the list that we had received. So as far as any possibilities, discussion by the project sponsors, or it didn't come in on any of the lists that we saw, and it didn't make the final 80 that was actually submitted by through the TMC representatives. As far as
from a traffic modeling standpoint, how does that show up? It would have to be a bottleneck, I would think.
We'd have to take a closer look at that, John. I don't have that available at my fingertips, but I imagine there is a little bit of bottlenecking happening there.
Yeah, it's got a long, long history. It was probably on a bond issue in the 1970s, if you can imagine that. And I think the only reason it didn't go forward was because of the difficulty in acquiring right-of-way through the Tohono O'odham Nation.
The Valencia project that was reviewed during the last meeting that goes from Cardinal over to Mission and goes through that, the intersection mods would at least address what Paul's talking about as far as the intersection deficiency that would be there. So that corridor would address at least that bottleneck area that's been long standing out there since the old Valencia widening project from back in 05, 06 was done.
This is the north-south segment, though, Rick.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean that intersection has long been a congestion point where Valencia and Mission intersect. So the southern boundary that you're referring to, that's been one of the long-serving bottlenecks, and recognizing that would need to be addressed under the Valencia corridor, then may help that discussion go forward with as future consideration.
So our current travel demand model does not show any current or future congestion, but bear in mind the issue that I mentioned there is it perhaps cannot quite get down to that level. So there may be some bottleneck experiences there, but it would be something that would need to be examined with field work and other data capture.
I would only ask that we at least inquire Pima County and Tohono O'odham whether they have any interest in that project.
Yeah, I was going to add that as we move forward in the refining process, and for all of you, if there are projects that you feel were not included, then that you can have that discussion at that time. So thank you for bringing that up.
This is Arlen. That brings up a question. Were there any projects submitted by the TO or the Santa Vera district? I don't think I saw anything.
We did not receive projects from those areas, Arlen.
Okay, well, thank you guys for getting through all of those projects. And just one more time, I wanted to remind everyone, if there are other projects that you're interested in, let staff know and do some research and reach out also to those jurisdictions who may have further insight about those projects. We're going to just short circuit our last agenda item here and ask if Paki can kind of give us a summary of our path forward from here.
Okay, I actually had another 45-minute presentation to do, which we'll need to table for next time. But just in a nutshell, our part of the homework that you received, we were going to review and discuss the alignment of the proposed project with the CAC's adopted goals. I know that a lot of you had questions on how that works, and really what we were going to do is I was going to talk to you about the process and how we got to the CAC adopted goals. That was going to be the first half of my presentation. And the second half is to start looking at, in the groups that you saw today, for example, the freeway interstate projects or the collector projects. From those groups, which are the most aligned with the CAC goals? Do they align with the survey results, which is something I was going to go into today? And then, do you think voters would consider them as an important needed improvement? So those kind of are the three topics I was going to try and facilitate for each of the groups of submitted projects. So I can go into that in more detail next time.
That's great. And if any of that, if any of your presentation is something that you want us to look at before next meeting, in order to kind of get through it quickly and in.
Sure, I'll try and send
some work. They're doing that.
Tom, this is Carol, and I wanted to make a suggestion or just a couple of comments about that before it comes back to us. Paki, the regional framework had both guiding principles and the goals. And we're only looking at the goals, which, as you may recall, the goals say are prefaced with additionally, these should be considered. And the guiding principles, if that's what we call them, talk about it in more detail about enhancing regional transportation systems overall efficiency, contribute to mobility, accessibility, safety, economic vitality, and sustainability in the region. And then these goals are kind of like in a vacuum without the guiding principles. And So that was one comment, and I'm wondering, when the jurisdictions gave these projects, did they have all that information to look at? I guess I back up and say, who filtered what goals were being met by these projects? Did the RTA staff go through that, or was that just whatever the jurisdiction felt about how they met the goals? And then I guess the other question I said before was, did they have all that information, or did they, whoever filled that out, just have what's on that spreadsheet that just says something like, I can't remember now, crashes or whatever?
Right. No, what the jurisdictions are asked to provide to us what they felt the alignment was to the CAC goals, and then they checked which they felt were aligned, which goals were aligned with their project. That's how we received that information. We did not ask them about the framework statements, because those are even more broad. We wanted to hone in on the specific goals to see how they felt those were aligned.
Okay, well, I guess the only comments there is they're kind of interrelated, so it would have been nice if they were looking at them, even if they didn't just check a box like that. And I guess other than that, it would seem a little subjective from each jurisdiction saying what goals they align with. So I'm wondering if RTA staff could look at that and put it through a filter of having been involved in all those discussions, because I'm a little worried that that is not that helpful to us when everybody's looking at it differently from the different jurisdictions, and they're only looking at the goals and not the.
Yeah, and it was packaged, Carolyn, as the regional framework were the statements and then the goals. So it was one document with everything, but we did ask about the goals. So thank you for that feedback.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, if you recall at the Technical Management Committee prior to the letter from the CAC chair going out, there was a conversation with the TMC members, and they did receive a copy of the adopted framework as well as the goals. And I believe the TMC members did have a conversation about that. And then once the letter received from the CAC chair, there was additional information, including the framework and the goals. So that all that information was provided. But as Paki said, we did rely on them to kind of define from their perspective how they align with the goals.
Yeah, my concern, thank you, Farhad. My concern is that the TMC members, because those are the managers, were probably not the ones that filled all that out. It was probably their DOT department. So I'm not sure if there's, with different jurisdictions, there might be more of a connection and an oversight than maybe with others not. It's just about the inconsistency, I guess, I'm concerned about.
Sure. Well, and we'll be happy to have that conversation with the TMC again and ask them to provide more definition if needed.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Arlen. I have another question or request.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and this goes back to our previous conversation on the projects. I don't know if the jurisdictions were required to show in their submittals how their project conforms with the land use or any other part of their general or comprehensive plan as adopted, or their major streets and routes, or frankly any regional plan that we have that's already been adopted through PAG. And I don't know if that was done, but particularly for the ones that are in developing areas, I'd be curious as to whether or not they show up in those plans, what the land use around those proposed land use in those plans are, because beyond the framework of the general plans, it seems that that's very more forward-looking than we have the money to do. So that's the reason I'm asking about that.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Arlen, as Rick mentioned earlier,
definitely as the project list starts getting more refined, those are the type of additional information that we're gonna make sure that you receive before you proceed with your process. Okay, yeah, that's very important to me on particularly on land use and how soon these roads are needed or if they're overdue. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, great point. All right, any other questions for or Pocky, did you have anything more to add to your
There's
description
quite
of
a
what
bit
we'll do
more,
next
Tom,
time?
but I would prefer to wait and give a better presentation to everyone next week, and I'll try and send some information ahead of time to help everybody. So,
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to remind of the committee that if you have any future agenda items, to let one of us officers know or one of the staff at RTA. And we've got a couple of good suggestions here about how we can incorporate your thoughts into our next meeting and further discussion of the projects. Pocky, anything to add before I adjourn the meeting?
no, I just want to thank everybody, what you said earlier, echo Tom's statement on everybody's participation. I know it's challenging for some of you. We're trying to make sure that you're all getting the information and getting on the webinar. So just please keep letting me know what when you're not receiving things. If you could do it ahead of time instead of the day of the meeting, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. All right. This is a last call for any comments. Very good. Thank you all for sticking around, and thank you also to members of the public who are listening in on YouTube. Our meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
See you all next time.